The winter of 1892 descended on Hawthorne Ranch like a relentless white shroud, blanketing the Montana plains in deep snow that muffled every sound and turned the world into a vast, silent expanse broken only by the occasional howl of wind through the pines or the distant crack of ice on the frozen creek. Elijah and Amelia had finally crossed the threshold of full intimacy that crisp autumn night, their bodies uniting in a symphony of long-suppressed passion that left them both breathless and transformed, her emerald eyes shining with tears of joy rather than pain as she clung to him afterward, whispering words of love that sealed their bond deeper than any vow. But consummation, as sweet as it was, did not erase the lingering echoes of those earlier months, the nights of hesitation, the whispered pleas, the patience that had been tested and refined like iron in a forge. Now, with spring calves already romping in the pastures and the first green shoots pushing through the thawing earth, Amelia carried a secret that both thrilled and terrified her, a life growing within, the fruit of their union, a tiny heartbeat that promised to change everything once more. She had suspected it for weeks, the morning sickness disguised as fatigue from chores, the tenderness in her breasts dismissed as the aftermath of their fervent nights, but confirmation came on a blustery March morning when the ranch's old midwife, Mrs. Harlan from town, visited under the pretense of delivering preserved jams and, with a knowing smile, pressed gentle fingers to Amelia's abdomen before declaring, "You're with child, dear. About 3 months along, I'd wager." Amelia's hands flew to her mouth, joy flooding her like sunlight through storm clouds, but beneath it lurked a shadow of fear, memories of her own mother's difficult labors whispered in Boston drawing rooms, tales of women lost in childbirth on the frontier, and the isolation of the ranch miles from proper doctors. That evening, as Elijah returned from checking the herd, his cheeks ruddy from the cold and his Stetson dusted with snowflakes, Amelia waited by the roaring fireplace, a quilt draped over her shoulders, her heart pounding as she prepared to share the news. Dinner was venison steaks seared with onions and potatoes roasted in the cast-iron Dutch oven, the aromas filling the house with warmth, but Elijah sensed her distraction immediately, his gray eyes narrowing as he hung his coat and washed his hands at the basin. "What's troublin' you, darlin'? You've been quiet all day," he said, pulling her into his arms, his embrace strong and reassuring, smelling of hay and fresh air. She pulled back slightly, taking his large hands in her smaller ones, placing them on her still flat belly. "Elijah, we're going to have a baby," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, and for a moment he froze, his face a mask of shock before breaking into the widest grin she'd ever seen, lifting her off her feet and spinning her gently in the kitchen, laughter booming from his chest like thunder. "A baby? Lord Almighty, Amelia, you've made me the happiest man alive," he exclaimed, setting her down to kiss her deeply, his hands cradling her face as if she were made of the finest china. But joy quickly gave way to practicality on the ranch. Elijah's protectiveness surged like a river in flood season, insisting she rest more, take on fewer chores, and even forbidding her from riding astride, though she protested with fiery spirit that she wasn't fragile. "You've got precious cargo now, woman. I'll not have you riskin' it," he declared one morning as she tried to saddle her mare for a short jaunt, his tone brooking no argument, and though she pouted, his concern wrapped around her like a warm shawl, reminding her of the patience he had shown before, now redirected toward their unborn child. As her belly began to swell, a gentle curve under her aprons, the nights grew even more intimate, Elijah's touches reverent and exploratory, marveling at the changes in her body, his lips tracing the faint blue veins that appeared, whispering, "You're more beautiful than ever," as they made love slowly, carefully, his restraint a new form of patience born from love rather than frustration. Yet challenges arose with the pregnancy. The summer heat brought swelling in her ankles, making long days in the garden taxing, and cravings struck at odd hours, pickles with honey, fresh berries in the dead of night, forcing Elijah to ride into town more frequently, grumbling good-naturedly but always returning with treats hidden in his saddlebags. One sweltering July afternoon, as thunderheads built on the horizon promising relief, Amelia felt the first real scare, a sharp cramp that doubled her over while hanging laundry on the line, pain radiating like echoes of those early wedding nights, making her gasp and clutch the clothes basket. Panic set in as she stumbled back to the house, calling for Elijah who was mending harness in the barn, and he came running, face pale as he scooped her up and carried her to bed, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "It's too early. Something's wrong," she whimpered, tears streaming, but he held her hand, fetching cool cloths and sending a ranch hand galloping for Mrs. Harlan. The midwife arrived hours later, examining Amelia with practiced calm, declaring it Braxton Hicks, false contractions, common but harmless, and advising rest, though the episode left them both shaken, Elijah pacing the floor like a caged wolf until dawn, vowing silently to build a closer ties to town, perhaps even a telephone line if the rumors of their spread proved true. That night, as rain lashed the windows and cooled the air, Amelia reached for him in the dark, her body aching not from pain but from need for reassurance. "Hold me, Elijah, make me feel alive," she murmured, and he obliged with exquisite tenderness, their love making a balm that chased away fears, her whispers turning to moans as he brought her to peaks without strain, his patience allowing her to lead the rhythm. The ranch prospered despite the personal trials, a bumper hay crop, healthy calves fetching good prices at auction, and Elijah hiring an extra hand to lighten the load, giving him more time at home to dote on his wife. Amelia, ever resilient, took up sewing tiny garments from soft flannel, her needle flying in the evenings as they sat by the fire, Elijah reading aloud from the Bible or dime novels, his deep voice lulling her into contentment. But as autumn returned, painting the leaves in fiery hues once more, the baby grew active, kicking vigorously during quiet moments, and Amelia's discomfort increased, backaches, sleepless nights, the weight pressing on her bladder forcing frequent trips to the outhouse in the chill. Elijah's patience was tested anew, not by desire withheld but by helplessness. He massaged her feet after long days, brewed willow bark tea for pains, and even learned to braid her hair when swelling made her arms tired.